Welcome, dear listener, to another night of soothing tales and whispered wonders. Tonight, let us drift away together, leaving the waking world behind as we follow a young soul named Marina on a journey into the heart of the ocean. Close your eyes, let the gentle darkness wrap around you like a warm, soft blanket, and take a slow, deep breath. Let the cares of the day slip away, melting into the quiet rhythm of your breath, and listen as the night calls you into a peaceful slumber. The sea that night was shrouded in velvet silence, the kind that hung heavy over the little coastal village, wrapping itself around rooftops and clinging to the winding alleys like a secret. Young Marina lay awake in her tiny room, her window cracked open to invite the salt-laden breeze. Outside, the waves whispered in steady rhythm, as if lulling the land to sleep. Yet within those waves there was another sound, a faint murmur, as though a voice slipped between the rise and fall of the tide. Marina closed her eyes, her heart beating a soft echo to the ocean's rhythm. She could swear she heard her name in that whisper. It drifted to her ears like a breeze that knows no rest, calling her, beckoning her away from warmth and safety into the unknown night. It was a voice she couldn't ignore. The stories of the village drifted to her mind, tales the fishermen spun with solemn faces and hushed voices. They spoke of nights like this, under a moon that glistened silver across the waves. Some claimed that the ocean sometimes chose someone who could hear the ancient songs buried beneath its depths. A call, they said, that was not meant for the faint-hearted. Only fools or the truly brave answer that call, her grandmother had once warned her. Yet the memory of those words only seemed to urge her forward. Wrapping herself in her faded shawl, Marina slipped quietly from her bed, leaving her small cluttered room behind. She stepped out into the night, the air cool and sharp against her skin. Her feet, bare against the sandy earth, carried her instinctively toward the shore. The village lay behind her, silent and unknowing, its lights flickering dimly against the endless stretch of darkened sea. As she approached the shore, the voice grew clearer. It was not like any sound she had known. It was as if the waves themselves had begun to speak, a murmur that held both sorrow and mystery, a tone filled with longing and depth. The waves, with each breath, seemed to draw her closer, inviting her not only to listen, but to understand. She waded into the water, feeling the sand shift and scatter beneath her toes, cool and alive. With each step forward, the voice grew stronger, drawing her deeper until she was waist-high in the water. Then she stopped, watching as the moonlight poured over the waves, illuminating each crest in shimmering silver. And there, at the horizon, something gleamed, a shadow stretching beyond the reefs she knew, a faint glimmer hinting at the unknown world lying beneath the surface. Her gaze drifted downward to the water swirling around her, where, for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw something move. A flash of colour, quick as a heartbeat, vanishing into the depths before she could fully make sense of it. Was it merely a fish? Or was it something more? She didn't know, but she felt an undeniable certainty rising within her. She was meant to follow it, to plunge into those waters and seek the source of the voice that had summoned her. With a final glance back at the shore, at the familiar shapes of houses and boats resting along the sand, she took a deep breath and dove. The world above faded quickly as she entered the cool embrace of the sea. She swam further, past the comforting shallows and into a place where the light grew faint. Yet, she could still make out strange patterns in the shifting shadows. The water was colder here, and the silence deeper. Her heartbeat sounded impossibly loud in her ears as she pushed onward into a realm that was not hers, into a place of ancient mysteries hidden beneath leagues of water. And then she saw it, a yawning cavern beneath her, its entrance framed by pillars of coral that rose like jagged towers. The coral gleamed faintly, casting a pale glow that lit the way forward, guiding her toward the heart of the caves. The whispers grew louder now, their murmur flowing around her like an embrace, filling her with both wonder and trepidation. She hesitated, feeling the weight of the ocean press down on her, as if warning her of the path ahead. But her curiosity overpowered her fear, and with one final breath, she pushed herself downward into the cave, letting the ocean close above her. Here, in the heart of the coral caves, the world was transformed. The waters grew thick with silence, and the coral walls pulsed with a faint, steady light, like the glow of a distant star. As she drifted further in, the whispers softened, becoming a lullaby sung by unseen voices, each note filling her with an inexplicable sense of calm. Marina knew in that moment that she had crossed the threshold into something sacred, something ancient. The call had brought her here, to the threshold of a world that lay beyond the reach of sunlight and memory, where secrets slept in silence, waiting for someone brave, or perhaps foolish, enough to find them. The silence within the coral caves was heavy, like the quiet that settles just before a storm breaks. Marina felt it wrap around her, pressing against her skin as she drifted further from the world she knew. The light from the moon and stars above had vanished, replaced by a glow so soft it seemed to come from within the coral itself, casting a pale, ghostly illumination along the walls. She swam deeper, her movements slow and tentative, as if each stroke took her into the heart of something sacred and forbidden. The coral formations grew thicker, twisting around her like an ancient living cathedral, their tendrils brushing against her fingers. Every so often, she would see a flash of movement, a darting shape in the corner of her vision, gone before she could turn her head. Shadows flitted and faded, and though she saw no eyes watching her, she felt their presence. The path within the caves was not clear. She felt as though she was moving in a dream, each turn leading her into another chamber, each more intricate than the last. The walls rose in columns and arches, twisting like the bones of some colossal creature that had once lived and died here, leaving only its silent echoes behind. At times, she thought she heard faint sounds, soft, almost musical. It was as though the coral itself was alive, humming in frequencies too low for her to understand. The notes resonated through the water, brushing against her ears and sending shivers down her spine. They reminded her of the songs fishermen sang, of old voices speaking of things lost to time, tales of forgotten realms. As she swam onward, Marina began to notice strange carvings etched into the coral walls. At first, they appeared to be mere scratches, accidental marks left by the movement of the sea. But as she looked closer, she saw they were patterns, intricate symbols spiraling outward in delicate looping lines. Each shape seemed to tell a story, though she couldn't decipher their meaning. One symbol in particular caught her eye, a spiral enclosed in a circle, a shape that seemed both familiar and alien. She reached out, her fingertips grazing its surface. The coral felt warm, almost pulsing beneath her touch, as if it was alive and aware of her presence. She quickly drew her hand back, but a faint warmth lingered in her fingertips, a reminder that whatever lay within these caves was far from ordinary. Deeper she went, and the coral walls began to change. Their colors shifted, from deep blues to shades of violet and crimson, as if she were moving through a spectrum of dreams. The glow grew brighter, casting strange shadows that danced across her skin. Each chamber felt more ancient than the last, as though she was moving backward through time, peeling away layers of the sea's memories. Finally, she came to a passage that opened into a vast, echoing chamber. Here the coral walls rose higher, forming arches that stretched upward, almost as though they sought the surface above. The water was clearer, and in the center of the chamber stood a massive coral formation, its shape like that of a throne carved from living stone. Around it, strange fish with scales that shimmered like liquid gold swam in silent circles, their eyes fixed on her with an intelligence that felt unsettling. As Marina approached the throne-like structure, the hum in the water grew louder, the melody shifting into something almost recognizable, like a half-forgotten lullaby. She felt herself drawn to the center of the room, her body moving of its own accord, her hands reaching out as if to touch the throne. But before she could take another step, she sensed movement beside her. She turned, and there, within the shadows, something glided forward. It was a creature unlike any she had ever seen. a graceful, elongated form, with skin that glowed faintly as though illuminated from within. Its eyes were large and dark, filled with the deep wisdom of the ocean. And as it regarded her, Marina felt a strange sensation, as though it could see her very thoughts. The creature made no sound, but she felt its presence wash over her like a wave. It held her gaze, unblinking, and in that moment she felt as though it was asking her a question, one she couldn't quite understand. She stood, mesmerized, caught in its gaze as the room around her seemed to blur, fading into shadows and light. And then, as quickly as it had come, the creature turned and drifted away, vanishing into one of the darkened corridors that led deeper into the caves. The air around her seemed to shift, the hum fading into silence once more, as if the presence of that strange being had silenced the caves themselves. Marina felt a pull to follow it, to leave the throne behind and go after the creature that had appeared to her like a vision. She took a step toward the corridor, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The shadows seemed to part for her, the coral walls guiding her, and she knew that wherever this path led, it would bring her closer to the heart of the mystery that lay hidden within the coral caves. Marina moved deeper into the labyrinth of coral, the world around her changing with each step. The path was narrow and winding, walls of coral pressing close, as though the caves themselves were testing her resolve, whispering secrets she could not yet understand. Soon the corridor opened into a vast dreamlike expanse, a hidden sea garden, suspended in silence, untouched by the sun. The space was unlike anything she had ever seen. Towering kelp forests swayed gently, their long tendrils drifting in graceful arcs, casting rippling shadows across the ground. They formed curtains of green and deep amber, mysterious veils that concealed what lay beyond. Enormous sea anemones dotted the seabed, their tendrils curling and uncurling slowly, like the delicate fingers of ghostly dancers. They glowed faintly, each one casting a soft light that illuminated the garden in shades of blue and violet, filling the air with an otherworldly luminescence. Strange creatures roamed here, gliding through the water as if they belonged to a time or place that had been forgotten. Tiny, translucent jellyfish drifted by, their bodies shimmering with an inner light, pulsing rhythmically as they floated past her in silent procession. Fish with scales as delicate as spun glass swam through the kelp forests, their movements fluid, their eyes fixed on her with a watchfulness that felt almost human. Marina drifted forward, feeling as if she had wandered into a land of dreams. The water was warmer here, the silence softer, and though she was deep beneath the waves, she felt no fear. It was as though the sea garden recognized her, welcomed her, its ancient beauty filling her with a strange sense of calm. As she explored, she noticed small details hidden among the kelp and coral. Shells arranged in intricate patterns on the seabed, stones stacked in towers, and tiny, delicate carvings etched into the rocks. They looked almost like offerings, remnants of those who had come before, perhaps drawn by the same whispers that had called her here. She felt the weight of their presence, 1,000 silent voices that had once passed through this place, leaving their marks like faint echoes. In the heart of the garden, she came upon a clearing where the light was brightest. Here, the water seemed to shimmer with a radiance that came from nowhere and everywhere, illuminating a grove of corals shaped like delicate open flowers. Each coral bloom held a small glowing pearl at its center, tiny orbs that seemed to pulse with a gentle, steady heartbeat. Drawn by an unseen force, Marina reached out to one of the coral blooms, her hand hovering above it. The pearl was warm to the touch, its glow intensifying as her fingers brushed against it. She felt a pulse travel through her hand, a sensation that filled her with a mixture of awe and sadness, as though she were holding a fragment of something ancient and powerful. Just as she was about to pull her hand away, she felt a presence beside her, a soft ripple in the water, a shadow passing across her vision. She turned, and there, drifting among the kelp, was another creature, more graceful and radiant than the one she had encountered before. This one was larger, its body a swirling tapestry of colors that shifted and shimmered like the surface of a dark lake touched by moonlight. Its eyes were deep and luminous, and when it looked at her, she felt as though it were gazing into her soul. The creature tilted its head, a silent question lingering in its gaze. Marina felt compelled to answer, though she didn't understand the question. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Instead, her thoughts filled with images, the quiet of the village, the warmth of her home, the stories of the sea that had been woven into her life since she was a child. She felt herself offering these memories to the creature, as though sharing a piece of herself. In response, the creature's colors deepened, swirling with shades of blue and violet. It moved closer, extending a slender, thin arm toward her, and in its hand was a pearl, like the ones nestled within the coral blooms. But this one was larger, brighter, pulsing, with a light so pure it made her heart ache. It held the pearl out to her as if offering her a gift, and she hesitated only a moment before accepting it. The moment her fingers closed around the pearl, a strange sensation washed over her. A vision, fleeting but vivid. She saw herself standing in a world bathed in light, surrounded by creatures of the sea, all watching her with eyes filled with wisdom and sadness. She felt their memories mingling with her own, stories of an ocean that held secrets older than time, a world that existed parallel to her own, yet entirely apart. As the vision faded, she looked down at the pearl in her hand, its light dimming until it was no brighter than a candle flame. The creature drifted backward, watching her with a gaze filled with unspoken understanding. Slowly, it vanished into the kelp, leaving her alone in the quiet sea garden. Marina felt the weight of the pearl in her hand, a warmth that seemed to seep into her very bones. She knew then that this was no ordinary gift. It was a fragment of the hidden world, a part of the mystery that lay within the coral caves. And as she turned to leave the garden, the creatures of the sea parted for her, their eyes following her with silent reverence, as though she were one of them, a child of the ocean returning to the light. Leaving the quiet sanctuary of the sea garden, Marina swam further into the unknown, the pearl warm and steady in her hand. She felt its faint glow pulse, as if it were a compass leading her deeper into a part of the coral caves where light and darkness wove together in a tapestry of mystery. The walls around her widened, the coral formations giving way to an open expanse, vast and shimmering, a hidden realm that lay beyond the reach of any light she had ever known. As she entered, a gentle radiance illuminated the water, casting shadows that danced and flickered around her. The light was not steady. It shifted and swayed, moving with the currents, as though the water itself held a soul. Here, the creatures of the ocean glided in silence, each more magnificent than the last, their bodies aglow with a soft inner light that pulsed in sync with the rhythm of the sea. Marina was surrounded by wonders, an endless procession of luminous beings, each more beautiful than the one before. Giant manta rays soared through the water, their wings spreading like dark flowing robes, their bellies marked with patterns of faint light that flickered as they moved. Schools of fish formed intricate patterns, swirling around her in spirals, their bodies flashing silver and blue in fluid, harmonious movement. Some of the fish were so transparent, she could see their hearts beat, tiny sparks of life within their shimmering forms. And there, darting through the shafts of light, were seahorses no larger than her fingers, their skin glowing with shades of indigo and emerald. They watched her with solemn, dark eyes, their movements delicate and precise, like dancers moving to a song only they could hear. She felt as though she had stepped into an ancient ritual, a dance of creatures who knew the secrets of the ocean's depths, their silence a language older than words. Drawn by an irresistible force, Marina swam further into the heart of this strange, radiant realm. The light here was stronger, brighter, until it seemed to flow around her, illuminating every ripple, every shadow. She felt as though she had become a part of the ocean's own heartbeat, her own pulse quickening as she drifted into the center of this world. And there, she found herself face to face with the most beautiful sight she had ever seen. A creature as vast as the sea itself, a being woven from light and shadow, suspended in the water as though it were made of the very fabric of the ocean. Its body was long and serpentine, covered in scales that shimmered like polished gems, each scale reflecting the light around it, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the water. It moved with an impossible grace, its movements slow and hypnotic, as though time itself had slowed to watch it pass. The creature's eyes were the color of the deep sea, vast and endless, filled with a sadness and wisdom that seemed older than the ocean itself. As it looked at her, Marina felt her own breath catch, her heart beating faster in her chest. There was no fear, only a deep, quiet reverence, a feeling that she was in the presence of something sacred, something that existed beyond the understanding of humankind. The creature regarded her for a long moment, as if searching for something within her. Then, with a flick of its tail, it began to move, and she felt herself following, her body moving instinctively, drawn by the silent call of this ancient being. It led her through the water, past fields of glowing coral and forests of kelp that swayed in rhythm with the currents. The light grew brighter, more intense, until it filled her vision, enveloping her in a radiance so pure it felt like warmth against her skin. And then they stopped. Before her, in a space framed by coral arches and softly glowing stones, lay a vast chasm. A deep, dark void that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The edges of the chasm were illuminated by strange, phosphorescent plants, their leaves casting a gentle light that shimmered like distant stars. She felt a chill run through her, sensing that this was the heart of the abyss, the very center of the coral caves. The creature looked at her, its gaze deep and unwavering, and in that moment, Marina understood. This was the end of her journey, the place where the secret of the ocean lay hidden. She felt a strange heaviness, as though the weight of the entire ocean pressed against her. The creature inclined its head, urging her forward, and she stepped to the edge of the chasm, peering down into its depths. Far below, she could see a soft, glowing light, faint but steady, pulsing like the heartbeat of the ocean itself. It was mesmerizing, filling her with a feeling of awe and longing, as if all the mysteries of the sea were held within that single, distant light. She looked back at the creature, and it held her gaze, its eyes filled with both warning and understanding. She knew then that this was a choice to dive into the unknown, to seek the light within the abyss, or to turn back, to leave this world behind and return to the safety of the surface. Marina felt the pearl in her hand, its warmth steady and reassuring, a reminder of the journey that had brought her here. And with a final glance at the creature, she took a deep breath and dived, her body plunging into the dark embrace of the chasm, leaving the world of light and beauty behind. As she descended, the light grew stronger, filling her vision. enveloping her in a warm, radiant glow. She felt herself becoming weightless, her thoughts drifting, her mind filled with images of the sea, of creatures and realms that existed only in the deepest parts of the ocean. And in that final moment, just before the light consumed her, she heard the oceans whisper once more, a voice as old as time, calling her name. Marina felt herself drifting downward, suspended in the embrace of the abyss. The light ahead grew brighter, casting its glow through the darkness, a radiance that was both alien and welcoming. The ocean's pressure pressed against her deep and ancient, as though reminding her of the depth she had reached, of the weight of its mysteries. She could feel the silent hum that pulsed from the heart of the abyss, a rhythm that matched the beat of her own heart, drawing her deeper. As she descended, the light slowly took shape, forming a structure that glistened like polished stone, yet seemed alive. She realized with awe that she was looking at an immense, spiraling formation, a structure that seemed to grow from the very bones of the earth, as if the ocean itself had shaped it over countless ages. Its surface shimmered with colors that shifted like the scales of a fish, each shade blending into the next, mesmerizing her with every pulse of light. And there, waiting at the base of the structure, was a figure, a creature unlike any she had seen. It was tall and slender, with limbs that seemed both solid and fluid, as if it was woven from water and light. Its face was shrouded in shadow, but its eyes were a brilliant, piercing blue, ancient and knowing, filled with the depths of the ocean's secrets. It stood silently, watching her with a gaze that felt like 1,000 voices speaking at once, each voice carrying the weight of the sea's forgotten history. The creature raised a hand, gesturing for her to come closer. Marina, entranced, moved toward it, her every step slow and reverent, her heart thrumming with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. She could feel its gaze upon her, studying her, as if assessing the worth of her journey, as though it could see all she had encountered, all she had learned in the world above. When she was close enough, the creature extended its hand, offering her something small and faintly glowing. She looked down to see a pearl, larger and more radiant than the one she had carried from the sea garden. Its light was gentle, pure, illuminating her face in soft, shifting hues. As she reached out and touched it, a warmth spread through her, filling her with a sense of peace and understanding. Then, without words, she understood. The pearl was a gift, a memory of this place, a fragment of the ocean's heart. It was a symbol of her journey, a reminder of the mysteries she had witnessed and the secrets she now carried within her. The creature inclined its head, its gaze softening, as though imparting a silent blessing. In that moment, Marina felt a sadness unlike any she had known. She realized that she could stay here, in this beautiful, hidden world, among the creatures and the light, within the embrace of the ocean's timeless depths. The temptation was strong, but something within her, perhaps the faint echo of her own name, carried by the currents, reminded her of the world above, of the life waiting for her in the village, the people who would never know what lay beneath the waves, but would always be a part of her. With a final lingering glance at the radiant pearl, Marina bowed her head in gratitude, feeling the weight of the gift in her hands. She looked at the creature, a silent farewell passing between them, and turned swimming upward, away from the heart of the abyss, back toward the surface and the world that awaited her. As she rose, the light of the abyss faded behind her, the creatures of the luminous realm watching in quiet reverence as she left. She passed through the sea garden, the kelp forests, parting as she moved, each creature bowing its head in a silent, graceful farewell. The pearl in her hand dimmed slightly, as if acknowledging that it, too, would become a memory, a fragment of a world she would forever carry within her. When Marina finally broke the surface, the night was silent, the sky above scattered with stars. The village lay in the distance, its lights dim and familiar, a reminder of the life she had left behind and would now return to. She waded through the shallows, feeling the weight of the pearl in her hand, its glow faint but steady, a small, eternal reminder of the world she had discovered. As she walked back to her home, her mind filled with images of the coral caves, of creatures that shimmered with light, of the ancient, silent presence that had bestowed its gift upon her. She knew that no one would believe her tale, that it would sound like the half-remembered remnants of a dream. But it did not matter. She carried the memory within her, a secret known only to her and the ocean itself. And when she returned to her room and placed the pearl on her windowsill, she could feel the faint hum of the ocean's heartbeat, a reminder of the adventure she had lived. From that night on, whenever she felt the pull of the waves, she would close her eyes, and the whispers of the coral caves would fill her mind, a song of mystery and wonder that only she could hear. And so Marina lived her days with the knowledge of a hidden world, a memory that belonged to her alone. The pearl's gentle glow, a silent promise that some secrets of the sea are meant to be kept, waiting patiently for the next soul brave enough to listen to the call.